Andrew Mason, who writes for DenverBroncos.com. He's at the Broncos. That's where he offices, at the Broncos facility. Nobody knows more about this team than he does. Andrew, thanks for joining the show.
No problem, guys.
Andrew, tell us about, first, Peyton Manning on the injury list. He did practice fully yesterday. The Broncos are saying, you know what, it's just general soreness. What do you see? What have you heard? Is he going to be fully healthy, fully ready to go Thursday night against Kansas City?
Yeah, I think he's going to be healthy. I don't think there's much of a doubt that he's going to be healthy and play. I think, for example, you look on the injury report, you've got Brandon Marshall listed with his foot injury, even though he suffered it last December and he had surgery on it 5 months ago. He's listed on there because he's playing in some pain, with some pain and some soreness, but there's little doubt that he's going to play and play extensively. And I think that's the case with Peyton Manning as well. Just because you're listed on the report doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to play and play all the way through. So I think as long as he stays upright, he'll play.
Andrew, Les is right. You follow this team more closely than anybody. I'm going to put you on the spot. Offensive line or Demaryius Thomas begging out of the game, not running correct routes, Emmanuel Sanders not playing in the exhibition season, not in rhythm with Peyton Manning, Owen Daniels not really clearing himself, Virgil Green not even showing up on any kind of list. Was it the tight ends? Was it the wide receivers? Was it the offensive line which stunk, or was it Peyton Manning, or a combination thereof?
I think it's a combination of everything, and I think part of it, to start with the offensive line, and yeah, you bring in Evan Mathis. That's going to help over the course of a season, no doubt. But you're still looking at a group up front that's got 4 guys out of 5 who were not on the 53-man roster last year because, of course, Matt Paradis was on the practice squad. And if you believe the cliche that everything starts up front, then that's going to cause a domino effect of problems that, frankly, are not going to be fully remedied until that group up front finds its footing and has the cohesion it needs to have. I think the other thing that, to go with all the offensive struggles and all the points issues, is you had 2 teams on Sunday who knew each other exceptionally well. As far as the Ravens knew about a lot of the elements of the Broncos offense because, of course, they had Gary Kubiak and Rick Dennison and Brian Periani in their building last year. And of course, having Owen Daniels had an impact as well. And then Gary Kubiak on the other side saw the Ravens personnel on a daily basis. He knew what they were going to try to do. He knew where their strengths and weaknesses were, particularly on the Ravens offensive side. I'm not so sure that long term we can really get a lot from viewing how this offense did in the game because the familiarity was so great that it was almost like both sides kind of neutralized each other. And honestly, as I was watching the game, I remember jotting in my notes at one point saying when the Broncos were on offense, I wrote to myself, it's almost like the Ravens have somebody in the huddle. And I think part of that is just knowing Kubiak and knowing what he wanted to do so well, even though the personnel was different, knowing what they were going to try to do. I think it's going to get better in time, but we'll see.
Are you telling us the Ravens are the new cheaters in the NFL that they had?
They were taping the Broncos practices.
I think maybe it was you recall Super Bowl 37 when the Bucks and Raiders went against each other, and John Lynch, basically was caught on mic saying, "Hey, we know what the Raiders are doing because John Gruden's been there." I think maybe it was a little bit similar, but I think it went both ways, and that's why you had 2 offenses that were stuck in neutral most of the game.
All right, Andrew, we've been debating the offensive questions for months now. Kubiak's offense, Manning's offense, a hybrid. I'm going to ask you an offshoot of that debate. When the dust settles, Andrew, what is this Broncos offense going to look like? What are they going to settle on?
Well, that's a good question. And I think there's some more moves and counter moves left as this offense evolves. I don't know what's going to look like, because I think they want to figure out what their strengths are. You know, you saw on Sunday quite a few 3 wide receiver looks. You saw them go no huddle at times. But when they were when the offense was at its most efficient, it was grinding it out, 81 yards in 17 plays on that fourth quarter drive to McManus' fourth field goal. I wonder if that's going to be a template that you see followed going forward, because the first 3 quarters, now granted, when they did try to run, it wasn't there, but they didn't stick with it. After 3 quarters, they had 39 pass plays and 13 run plays. And that, seemed an awful lot like the imbalance of the offense at St. Louis last year, which kind of led to the virtual 180-degree pivot in the offense in November that went to a more run-centric game. I don't think we're going to see anything that extreme, but I do think we may see some more 2 tight end fullback type packages this week, more than the 3 wide sets, and I think we may see the offense a little bit more patient with the running game. And how that does, I think, is going to determine where this offense evolves, whether it comes close to something that's a true Kubiak offense, or whether the Broncos end up going back to something that's more resemblant of what they did the past 3 years.
Andrew, the Broncos are in a position to set the all-time NFL record for victories in the conference on the road. Can they do it, and how can they do it? And if you think the Ravens and the Broncos are familiar with each other, you know that Andy Reid and the Broncos are familiar with each other. What's going to happen on Thursday? I mean,
the division record. Division record.
What did I say? Conference. Yeah. Division. Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable what this team has done in the division the last 4 years on the road specifically, and all streaks come to an end at some point. Whether it happens Thursday, I think some of it's out of the Broncos' hands, because you're going to have a very emotional environment. Of course, it's going to be Eric Berry's first home regular season game since he returned from lymphoma. You know that for any primetime game, the Arrowhead Stadium crowd is going to be amped. Looking back at the games they played last year, and especially when the Broncos dominated in Kansas City, that was a Chiefs defense that was hamstrung by injury, and of course the loss of Berry at that point. Well, instead, it's going to be healthy. Berry's back. Derek Johnson who missed a lot of time last year. He's back at an inside linebacker. So it's going to be tough sledding for the Broncos on Thursday night, no question. I think there's a couple of things they need to do. Number one, obviously, the defense has got to play as it did Sunday. It's got to be in lockdown mode, and it's got to attack early. One thing when you look at the game against the Ravens is they got that pass rush going so well, so quickly, that it discombobulated the Ravens to the point where the deep ball, which they love, was basically absent from the offense. It was all check downs and screens and underneath stuff, and that basically prevented the Ravens from having perhaps their best weapon, Steve Smith Sr., going downfield at their disposal. So you've got to get the pass rush going early. You've got to and also contain Jamal Charles early, and basically limit the Chiefs' options on offense, and that will keep them down and keep the game close. And then what you're hoping is that the offense finds a bit more consistency. That we've seen that it can drive downfield. It had some drives against San Francisco. It had some scoring drives against the Ravens, but they've got to find ways to finish those drives. And they're getting field goals just fine. They need to turn some of those into touchdowns, which means that when Manning has an open receiver, like he had Demaryius Thomas open in the 49er preseason game, like he had Emmanuel Sanders going up the left sideline on Sunday, he's got to hit those passes. And to me, that's going to be crucial for the Broncos getting this offense going, because they can mount some drives, but if they're settling for field goals, it's going to be very tough for them to win games like the one they have Thursday.
Andrew, last thing, I was in the locker room late on Sunday. C.J. Anderson was limping pretty badly on a badly sprained big toe. That's what he told me it was. Mm-hmm. Do you see him playing on Thursday?
Looks like he's going to play. Kubiak has mentioned that he expects him to practice tonight. talked to him in the locker room. He thinks he's going to be good to go. Now, granted, I think they might try to give Ronnie Hillman a few more carries than on Sunday. I think maybe to ease the pressure on C.J. Anderson, but I think he's going to play at least some role. He sounded pretty confident and actually looked to be moving around when he was walking around. Looked to be moving around just fine, so I think he's going to go.
All right, Andrew. Appreciate it. Give us your Twitter handle.
At Mace Denver.
At Mace Denver for all the great Broncos information that you want and you need. Also, denverbroncos.com. We'll see you tomorrow, Andrew. Thanks.
All right, no problem. Take care, guys.
Andrew Mason.